Here's a story based on the title The Winter Hunt of Greyfell Forest, where tracks fade and truth is found. The Winter Hunt of Greyfell Forest, where tracks fade and truth is found. The snow came early that year, blanketing Greyfell Forest in a silence that even the wind dared not disturb. Trees stood like sentinels, their limbs heavy with frost, and the sky above hung low and colorless. The villagers of Elmsreach, nestled at the forest's edge, spoke in whispers of the pale wolf seen haunting the frozen woods, the ghost of Greyfell, they called it. But to Ira Thorne, the wolf was no ghost. It was real, and it had taken her brother. 1 week earlier, her younger brother Calin had ventured into the forest with the hunters, only he never returned. The rest of the party came back bloodied and silent, their eyes shadowed with something unspoken. They claimed the snowstorm had separated them, that Calin had vanished without a sound. But Ira knew Calin better than anyone, he wouldn't have strayed. So she set out into the forest, alone, with only her father's longbow and a bundle of dried meat. The hunt was not just for the wolf, it was for answers. The forest closed in around her like a secret. Ira moved between the trees, following faint impressions in the snow, tracks that vanished as quickly as they formed, as if the forest itself sought to protect the creature. Day bled into night, and still she pressed on. Then, on the third day, she found it. Not the wolf, but the clearing, charred black and ringed with strange symbols carved into the trees. There were remnants of fire and torn cloth, not from a beast, but from a ritual. Ira's breath clouded in the air as realization chilled her to the bone. This wasn't the work of a wild animal. That night, the wolf came to her. It didn't attack. It stood across the clearing, eyes like molten gold locked on hers. There was no malice in its gaze, only sorrow. Around its neck hung a strip of Caelin's cloak. Ira lowered her bow. The wolf turned and padded silently toward the shadowed trees, stopping once to glance back, a silent invitation. She followed. Deep within the heart of Greyfell, the forest changed. The trees grew taller, older, their bark etched with stories in ancient runes. The wolf led her to a place where the air shimmered with forgotten magic, where the veil between worlds thinned. There, she saw them, figures cloaked in black, gathered around a stone altar, and Calin, bound, but alive. The villagers, the ones who returned without him, they hadn't told the truth. They were hunting something older than the wolf, a spirit of the forest, awakened by greed and blood. The wolf had been protecting Calin, not harming him. Ira loosed her arrow before they saw her. The first man fell without a sound. The wolf lunged with a roar more human than beast, and the clearing erupted in chaos. When it ended, the forest was silent once more. Calin was free, the cult was gone, and the wolf, guardian, not ghost, watched them go. As Ira and Calin made their way back through the snow, the tracks behind them slowly vanished, swallowed by the falling snow. But some truths, once found, do not fade. And Greyfell remembered. Would you like a visual map or illustration of the forest or its landmarks? Here is the next part of the Winter Hunt of Greyfell Forest, where tracks fade and truth is found. A continuation that explores what happens after Ira and Calin escape the cult and return to Elmsreach. Part 2, Echoes Beneath the Snow. When Ira and Calin emerged from Greyfell's edge, dawn had barely touched the sky. Elmsreach stood quiet beneath the snowdrifts, smoke curling lazily from a few chimneys. But something had changed. The village no longer felt like home, it felt like a place built on silence. As they approached their cottage, the blacksmith's wife saw them and froze. Her mouth opened, but no words came. She backed away, eyes wide, as if ghosts had returned instead of children. Inside their home, their mother wept. She'd thought them both lost to the woods, but once the embrace ended, her trembling hands pressed something into Ira's palm, a silver pendant in the shape of a crescent fung. It was left at the door 3 nights ago. She whispered, no name, just this, and blood on the step. Over the following days, Ira and Calin learned the cult had deeper roots than they imagined. Several elders had vanished during the storm, others claimed amnesia, and no one spoke of the clearing, or the ritual. The villagers simply moved on, sweeping the blood beneath the snow. But Ira couldn't forget the symbols on the trees. She couldn't forget the wolf. She began to study the pendant. Its markings matched those in the forest, only older, forgotten sigils from the time when Greyfell had guardians, not ghosts. Then, one night, Kaelin awoke screaming. He spoke in tongues, his eyes glowing faintly gold. Ira held him as he thrashed. But something had followed them out of the forest, something left undone. The next morning, the forest called again. Not with sound, but with silence. Birdsong had stopped, the snow did not fall, and in the distance, beyond the frost-covered hills, smoke rose, not from chimneys, but from fire. Ira knew the truth now. The cult had only awakened a fraction of what lay beneath Greyfell, and the wolf had not just been a guardian, it had been a warning. The real hunt was yet to begin. Would you like me to continue with the next chapter, or provide a map or character guide to accompany the story? Here is the next chapter of the winter hunt of Greyfell Forest, where tracks fade and truth is found. Part 3, The Hollow Flame. The smoke led them east, toward the old ruins of Wormswatch, an abandoned watchtower said to predate Elmsreach itself. The villagers never spoke of it, save in drunken whispers, but Ira had seen it once as a child, a broken spine of stone half buried in snow, clawed by wind and time. Now, fire glowed through its collapsed upper chambers. Ira and Kaelin traveled on foot, armed with bow and blade. Kaelin hadn't spoken since the fit. His eyes, once warm, held something colder now, like he remembered things he shouldn't. As they climbed the ridge to Wormswatch, he finally spoke. "They're burning the seal," he said, "the thing that kept it asleep." Ira turned sharply. "What thing?" "The hollow flame," he said, "the old one beneath Greyfell. The cult served it once, but they lost control. That's why the wolf exists. It was created to contain it." The realization fell like a stone in her stomach. They hadn't ended the ritual, they'd only delayed it. Inside Wormswatch, they found the last of the cultists, cloaked in ash, chanting in circles around a pit of black flame. The fire didn't warm, it pulsed like a heartbeat, feeding on the snow, the stones, the very air. At the edge of the ritual stood a man in antlered robes, Father Eldrick, the village healer. He had vanished months ago. His voice boomed unnaturally. "The blood of kin awakened the gate. Now the flame shall hollow all." Ira stepped forward, arrow notched. "It's over, Eldrick. The forest rejects you." But Eldrick only smiled. "The forest has no will, only hunger." From the pit, something stirred. It rose like smoke and shadow, a beast not of fur, but void, its eyes twin coals in a face that was never alive. The hollow flame had taken form. Kaelin collapsed, screaming again, his voice layered with others, men, women, children, even beasts. Ira knelt beside him, torn between brother and bow, and then, from the shattered window above, came a howl. The wolf had returned. It leapt through the flames, wreathed in silver fire, and collided with the beast. The room exploded into chaos, howls, chants, the crackle of magic older than language. Ira's pendant burned against her chest. Instinctively, she held it aloft. Light burst forth, forming a ring around her and Kaelin, shielding them. Then, silence. When the smoke cleared, the tower was empty. No wolf, no cultists, no flame. Only the pendant, cold once more, and her brother, quiet, breathing. But the forest outside was no longer silent. Birds sang again, the wind returned, and though the wolf was gone, Ira knew its hunt had passed to her now. She had inherited the fire, and with it, the duty. Would you like to continue the story into a final chapter or epilogue? Here is the next and final chapter of the winter hunt of Greyfell Forest, where tracks fade and truth is found. Part 4, The Keeper of Greyfell. Seasons turned. Winter melted into spring, and with it, Greyfell Forest seemed to awaken, not with menace, but memory. The snow retreated from its roots. New growth crept over the ruins of Wormswatch. The villagers, though still wary, returned to old routines. But Ira was changed. She no longer slept through the night. Each dawn, she walked the forest's edge, watching for signs, strange tracks, shifting winds, the shimmer of things unseen. Her brother Kaelin recovered slowly, though he remained marked. At times he spoke in the ancient tongue. At times he saw things no one else could. They kept to themselves now, a cottage nearer the woods than the village. Visitors came rarely. Yet the forest came often. One evening, while walking beyond the hollow birch grove, Ira heard a familiar sound, a soft rustle of leaves without wind, a presence in the periphery. She turned. The wolf stood there. Its fur shimmered with moonlight, not shadow, and its golden eyes reflected no malice. But it did not step forward, it waited. Then Ira understood. This was not a beast of fang and bone. This was an echo, a spirit reborn, not to fight, but to guide. From the satchel on her shoulder, she drew the pendant once more. It pulsed softly, not with power, but recognition. The wolf dipped its head, then faded into the silver dusk. Not gone. Guarding. In the years that followed, tales of Greyfell changed. Children no longer feared the forest. They left tokens at its edge. Hunters reported strange protections, arrows that flew truer, trails that never led to cliffs, and when storms came, they passed swiftly, as if steered by unseen paws. Ira came to be known as the keeper of Greyfell, not a hunter, but a guardian. She taught the old language to those willing to learn. She taught respect, not fear. And though the hollow flame's mark lingered in the dark parts of the woods, it never rose again. Because where tracks once faded, truth had been found. And that truth had teeth. The end. Would you like this story formatted as a short story PDF or turned into a chaptered novella format? Here's an epilogue to The Winter Hunt of Greyfell Forest, where tracks fade and truth is found, a final whisper from the forest itself. Epilogue, where tracks begin again. Years passed. The forest remained. Ira aged with grace and quiet purpose. The villagers grew to trust her, though few truly understood the depth of what she had faced, or what she had become. Children called her the Forest Witch in playful tones. Travelers spoke of a woman in a grey cloak who walked with wolves and whispered to trees. Kalin became a scholar of the old ways. His visions never left him, but he learned to read them, not as curses, but warnings. Together, they mapped forgotten paths, sealed old wards, and taught balance. But deep within Greyfell, beyond any trail or map, a single tree stood taller than the rest, its bark blackened by fire, its roots wrapped around ancient stone. Beneath it, something pulsed faintly. Not evil. Not awakened. But waiting. And one day, when snow fell silent again, and tracks once more began to vanish behind the veil of frost, a child wandered into the forest, a girl with a silver pendant and her mother's eyes. She did not fear the cold, because she had been born with the fire. And the forest would remember her, too. Now the tale is legend. But legends walk quietly, beneath snow, and beneath truth. Would you like me to compile the full story into a downloadable format with chapter titles and a cover design? The story has now reached its natural close with the epilogue, completing the arc of Ira, Kalin, and the spirit of Greyfell. However, if you're looking for more, perhaps a sequel, a prequel, or a spin-off following a new character or the next generation, I can create that for you. Here are a few directions we could take. Sequel, The Ember Path, Legacy of the Forest Keeper. Follow Ira's daughter as she uncovers a deeper threat tied to the forest's roots, where magic and memory intertwine. Prequel, The First Flame, Rise of the Guardian Wolf. Discover how the Guardian Wolf was created during the age of the Hollow Flame's first awakening. Standalone tale, Ash and Antlers. Told from the perspective of Father Eldrick before his fall, what drew him to the Hollow Flame, and how his soul fractured in the shadows of power. Would you like me to continue in one of these directions? Or do you have another idea for what comes next? Let's continue with the sequel concept, The Ember Path, Legacy of the Forest Keeper. The Ember Path, Legacy of the Forest Keeper. Chapter 1, The Spark in the Ash. The snow was falling again, thicker, heavier, more insistent. It seemed as though the earth itself was holding its breath. Greyfell Forest stood silent, still as death, its towering trees heavy with frost, while the wind whispered secrets through the branches. Ira Thorne, keeper of Greyfell, stood at the edge of the forest, watching the soft dance of snowflakes in the gathering twilight. The pendant she wore, her mother's gift, passed from her to Ira, and now to her daughter, glinted softly, a faint ember burning at its center. The years had passed quickly, though time itself seemed to stretch in the deep heart of the forest. Ira's daughter, Lyra, had grown into a strong, curious girl, sharp-eyed and fearless, with her mother's determination and her father's quiet wisdom. Yet, there was something different about Lyra, something untamed. She was not simply a child of Greyfell, she was its heir. Mother, Lyra called, her voice cutting through the chill. I saw it again. Ira turned, her heart heavy, but her gaze softening as she looked upon her daughter. Lyra's eyes were bright, too bright, her face drawn in a tight expression of concern. What did you see? The wolf, Lyra whispered, almost reverently, not just in the trees. It was standing at the river, waiting for me. Ira's breath caught. The wolf had not been seen in years, not since the last battle with the hollow flame. The spirit of Greyfell had retreated into silence, leaving only memories of a time long past. To speak of it now was a warning. It's just the wind, Lyra, Ira said softly, though her eyes darted toward the forest's shadowed heart. The forest plays tricks on those who are too eager to find something. But Lyra's gaze didn't waver. No, mother, it's calling me. Chapter 2, The Fire Beneath the Snow. That night, after Lyra had gone to bed, Ira sat alone by the hearth, the fire crackling low. Her thoughts drifted to the pendant, which rested heavy in her palm. The silver crescent fong, a symbol of the balance she had protected for so many years. She had hoped that the battle was over, that Greyfell would find peace. But the forest, with its ancient magic, was never content to sleep forever. And Lyra was a part of it now, bound to the forest by blood and spirit. What the wolf had once been to her, the forest now called her to become. The wind howled outside, an eerie, mournful cry, and Ira's eyes narrowed in suspicion. There was something wrong, something stirring deep within the heart of Greyfell. Suddenly, she stood, her instincts racing. She grabbed the longbow, her fingers brushing the familiar wooden handle. Her heart pounded as she stepped toward the door. There was no more time to wait. The forest was calling, and this time, it would not be stopped. Chapter 3, The Flame Rekindled. Ira and Lyra made their way through the forest in silence, the snow crunching beneath their boots. Lyra's breath came in short bursts as she glanced nervously at the trees that loomed around them, their branches reaching like long, skeletal fingers toward the gray sky. They're coming, aren't they? Lyra asked quietly, her voice trembling slightly. Ira glanced at her daughter, her heart aching for the fear she saw in those young eyes. We're not sure, but we'll face it together, just like we always have. The further they ventured into the forest, the heavier the air became. It felt charged, like the very earth was holding its breath, waiting for something to awaken. The shadows in the trees grew longer, and the wind began to stir, carrying the faintest sound of a howl, not distant, not echoing. Close. A low growl rumbled from deep within the forest, and before Ira could react, something emerged from the trees. It was the wolf, but it was different now, its fur darker, its eyes glowing with the same golden fire Ira had once seen in the hollow flame. The wolf's presence was overwhelming, both ancient and powerful, and it moved toward Lyra. Lyra froze. No, Ira said sharply, her voice stern. Stay back, Lyra. But the wolf did not approach her. Instead, it lowered its head toward Lyra, its eyes filled with an intensity that Ira had never seen in any living creature. It was as though the forest itself was speaking through the wolf, calling to the bloodline that had been born to protect it. Then the wolf spoke, not with words, but with the same golden fire that burned within the pendant. The fire is rekindled. Keeper, you will no longer walk alone. Chapter 4, The Path of Fire. The wolf did not attack. It did not flee. Instead, it circled them, as if guarding them, its presence an unspoken promise. Ira felt the weight of the moment settle upon her. The forest had not called them here to end the cycle, but to begin it anew. Lyra's inheritance was not just a bloodline, it was a legacy, a responsibility. With a deep breath, Ira turned to her daughter. Lyra, this is your path now. The wolf will guide you. But you must understand, the forest is not merely a protector. It is a keeper of balance, of secrets, and you must learn to walk between worlds. The hollow flame is not gone. It has only been waiting, and it will rise again. Lyra nodded, a spark of determination lighting her eyes. She reached for the pendant around her neck, its fire glowing brighter now, as if alive. Then I will be ready, Mother. I will walk the path of fire. Would you like me to continue with this new chapter, exploring Lyra's journey, or perhaps dive deeper into the magic of the forest itself and its history? Here's the next chapter of The Ember Path, Legacy of the Forest Keeper. Chapter 5, The Boundaries of Fire. The days that followed were filled with a new sense of purpose. Ira, though still the keeper, began to train Lyra in the ways of Greyfell, its ancient language, the wards of protection, and the delicate balance between the living world and the spirits that roamed beneath it. Lyra was a quick learner, but each lesson came with a heavy cost, as the forest demanded both respect and sacrifice. The bond between them deepened, and with it, Lyra's understanding of the forest's true nature. No longer just a protector of the village, she was becoming something more, a conduit of Greyfell's ancient power. It was one evening, as the sun sank low and the sky bled shades of purple and gold, that the forest spoke again, but this time, it was not the wolf that came. A figure emerged from the mist, its outline indistinct but its presence undeniable. Tall and regal, with antlered horns twisted like gnarled branches, it stepped into the clearing where Ira and Lyra stood. The air around them shimmered, crackling with magic that seemed to bend time itself. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She instinctively stepped closer to her mother. "This is the Forest King," Ira said softly, her voice both reverent and cautious, "a guardian older than the wolf." The figure's eyes gleamed with the same golden fire that burned within the pendant. It was not human, yet not entirely spirit. It was the embodiment of the forest's oldest magic, a being who had watched over Greyfell long before any of them had walked its soil. "You have returned, Keeper," the Forest King's voice rumbled, deep and ancient, as though the very earth itself had spoken, "and you have passed your mantle." Ira nodded, her expression grim. "The hollow flame stirs again. It will not stay quiet for long." The Forest King tilted its head. "It has never been quiet. It is always here, beneath the roots, beneath the snow. But now, the balance shifts. The fire within you, within your daughter, it is the key." Lyra stepped forward, a surge of courage running through her. "I will protect the forest. I will keep the flame contained." Here's the next chapter of the Ember Path, Legacy of the Forest Keeper. Chapter 9, The Heart of Ash. The days following the awakening of the hollow flame were fraught with tension. Greyfell, once serene and eternal, now carried an undertone of urgency. The air hummed with magic, and the forest itself seemed to hold its breath, watching as Ira and Lyra sought the heart of the hollow flame. Each day, they ventured deeper into the forest, drawn to the dark places where ancient roots intertwined with forgotten magic. They knew that somewhere beneath the soil, beneath the layers of time and stone, lay the source of the fire, the true nature of the hollow flame. But every step they took seemed to bring them closer to a mystery they could not fully understand. In the stillness of the night, as the moon hung heavy in the sky, Lyra would sometimes wake, feeling the pull of the flame deep inside her. It was a gnawing, relentless hunger that could not be sated, an insatiable call that echoed in her blood. "Mother," she would whisper in the dark, her voice thick with the weight of her dreams, "the fire is not just in me. It's in the forest, in the roots, in the stones. It wants to be free." Ira would sit beside her daughter, her face shadowed by both concern and pride. "The fire is a part of us now, Lyra. It is not to be feared, but understood." The hollow flame was never just a threat. It was a part of the forest's balance, until it was broken. Now, we must mend it, together. Chapter 10, The Song of Stone. One morning, as they traveled deeper into the heart of the forest, they came upon a place that neither of them recognized, a secluded grove where the trees were twisted in unnatural shapes, their branches curling like clawed hands reaching toward the sky. At the center of the grove stood a stone circle, ancient and worn by time, but still standing proud. It was here that the flame had first been born, long before the age of men, long before even the Forest King had taken his place as guardian. The stone circle pulsed with an energy that seemed to hum with the heartbeat of the earth itself. Lyra knelt before the stones, feeling the warmth rising from the ground beneath her. She closed her eyes, reaching out with her senses, as though she could feel the pulse of magic beneath her fingertips. "Mother," she whispered, her voice trembling with awe, "this is it. This is where it all began." Ira stepped forward, her eyes scanning the stone circle. "This is the core of the hollow flame, the place where it was first bound. The fire was never meant to remain hidden, Lyra. It was meant to be a guardian, a force of protection, a guiding flame. But something went wrong, and now, we must undo the damage." The ground beneath them rumbled again, this time louder, more insistent. The trees creaked and groaned as if alive, and the air grew thick with a weight that was almost unbearable. The fire inside Lyra flared in response, burning bright and fierce in her chest. It's calling me, she said, her voice rising with a mixture of fear and determination. It's asking me to open the gate, to let it return to the world. Ira took a step back, her hand reaching out to steady her daughter. No, you must not release it. The hollow flame is dangerous, unstable. You cannot control it yet. Lyra looked at her mother, her eyes filled with an understanding that seemed beyond her years. But I am the flame. Mother, it's inside me. I can't deny it any longer. Chapter 11, The Gatekeeper's Test. The ground trembled once more, and the stones of the circle began to glow with an eerie, golden light. The magic that had been dormant for centuries was stirring, rising like a tide, and the forest responded, as though it too could sense the awakening. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the depths of the grove, a deep, resonant voice that seemed to come from both the earth and the sky. To open the gate, one must pass the test, the voice intoned. Ancient and powerful, the flame must be guided, not unleashed. The keeper's blood alone will not suffice. Only the true heir can carry the fire. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest as she looked around, her eyes wide with a mixture of wonder and fear. What test? She asked, her voice shaky. The voice answered, but this time, it was not the Forest King. It was a voice older, colder, wrapped in shadow. The test of the spirit, the test of the heart. You must walk the path of the flame and face the darkness within you. Only by understanding the nature of the hollow flame will you be able to control it. Only then will you be able to guide the fire to its rightful place. Before Ira could protest, the ground beneath them shifted, and the stone circle began to open. A dark passageway appeared in the earth, leading down into the unknown depths. Lyra stepped forward, her hand clenching the pendant tightly, the fire within her surging in response to the pull of the passage. Lyra, no, Ira called, but it was too late. Her daughter had already begun her descent into the darkness. With a deep breath, Ira followed, unwilling to let her daughter face the unknown alone. Chapter 12, The Path of Shadows. The passage was narrow, the walls of stone slick and cold to the touch. The deeper they went, the darker it became, until even the light of the pendant seemed to be swallowed by the shadows. Stay close, Lyra, Ira murmured, her voice barely a whisper. We don't know what lies ahead. Lyra nodded, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the pendant. But there was something different in her eyes now, something fierce, something untamable. The fire within her had become a part of her very soul, and with each step, she felt its power growing. They reached the heart of the passage, an ancient chamber carved into the earth itself. In the center stood a great stone altar, its surface covered in strange runes that pulsed with a sickly light. And there, atop the altar, was the source of the hollow flame, a swirling, chaotic mass of fire and shadow, trapped within a glass-like prison. Lyra stepped forward, her heart racing as she felt the fire within her beckoning her to release it. This is it, she whispered, her voice filled with a sense of both awe and dread. This is where it all began. Ira reached for her daughter's arm, her voice tight with urgency. Lyra, remember, you cannot control the fire by releasing it. It will consume you. It will consume everything. But Lyra was already reaching for the prison, her fingers brushing against the cool surface. And then, the hollow flame stirred. Would you like to continue this path, exploring Lyra's confrontation with the fire and its consequences, or dive deeper into the ancient forces that shaped the hollow flame's origin? Here's the next chapter of The Ember Path, Legacy of the Forest Keeper. Chapter 13, The Breaking of the Flame. Lyra's fingers brushed the surface of the glass-like prison, and in that instant, everything around her seemed to still. The air grew thick, heavy with the weight of ancient magic. The hollow flame pulsed, its fiery tendrils reaching out as if it recognized her presence, responding to the pull within her. Ira's breath caught in her throat as she reached for her daughter, but Lyra held up a hand, her eyes now filled with a fierce determination. I have to do this, Mother, Lyra said, her voice steady but filled with an undeniable hunger. I am the fire, and the fire is me. Ira's heart clenched. She knew what this meant. Lyra was no longer just a keeper, she was a bridge between worlds, the guardian of the hollow flame. But to unlock it, to free it from its prison, would require more than just strength. It would require sacrifice. Lyra, listen to me, Ira said, her voice breaking through the growing tension. You don't understand what you're about to unleash. The hollow flame, this power, it isn't just fire. It's chaos. It's destruction. You can't control it alone. Here's the next chapter of the Ember Path, Legacy of the Forest Keeper. Chapter 17, The Rising Shadows. Months had passed since Lyra had contained the hollow flame, and the forest had begun to stabilize. The once chaotic magic that had threatened to consume everything was now tempered, held within her as both a burden and a gift. With the power of the flame under control, Greyfell had flourished again, its people sensing the change in the air, a renewed strength in the forest, a fresh, vibrant pulse that emanated from the trees themselves. But even as the winds of change blew through the forest, a quiet unease settled in Lyra's heart. Though the fire had been contained, there was a persistent feeling of something lurking beneath the surface, an ancient force that watched from the shadows, waiting for the moment when it would rise again. It was during one of her solitary walks through the forest, her senses attuned to the soft rustling of the leaves and the distant calls of wildlife, that Lyra first felt it, the shift in the air, a subtle crackling, as though the fabric of the forest itself had begun to fray at the edges. The familiar warmth of the hollow flame inside her flickered uneasily, a warning. She paused, eyes scanning the tree-line, but there was nothing visible, no immediate danger. Yet, the sense of being watched, of something waiting, gnawed at her. And then she heard it, the faintest whisper on the wind. Lyra. The voice was not her mother's, nor the familiar tones of the forest king. It was older, colder, a voice that echoed through time itself. It seemed to come from the very heart of the forest, from the depths where no human dared to tread. Lyra's heart skipped a beat as the whisper grew louder, clearer. Come closer, you are not yet ready. She turned toward the sound, compelled by an urge she could not explain. The whisper called to her, drawing her deeper into the woods. She followed the path instinctively, her steps quickening as though the forest itself was guiding her. But as she journeyed further, the air grew heavier, the shadows deeper, the trees began to twist in strange, unnatural shapes, their bark darkening, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands. The forest that had once been a sanctuary now seemed to close in on her, the weight of something ancient pressing down on her shoulders. Chapter 18, The Hollow's Heart. Lyra reached the heart of the forest, the place where the roots of the trees intertwined and the ground pulsed with dark energy. At the center, a massive stone structure rose from the earth, an ancient altar, long forgotten, its surface etched with runes that shimmered with an unsettling, cold light. The air around it buzzed with dark magic, a stark contrast to the warmth of the hollow flame that still burned within her. As she approached the altar, the whispers grew louder, more urgent. The flame is not yours to control, guardian. It is a prison. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. The fire inside her flared, reacting to the presence of this strange magic. But she held it in check, unwilling to let it lose control again. Who are you? Lyra demanded, her voice strong despite the fear clawing at her chest. The shadows around the altar shifted, coalescing into a figure, a tall, gaunt figure draped in tattered robes. Its face was obscured, but the darkness around it seemed to pulse with malevolent intent. I am the one who bound the hollow flame, the figure intoned, its voice a hiss, like wind through dead trees. I am the one who gave it purpose. Lyra's heart thundered in her chest. You're the one who did this, the one who twisted the flame? The figure tilted its head, a dry laugh echoing in the air. Twisted? No. I gave it form, gave it meaning. But you, child, you do not understand. The flame is not a tool for peace. It is a force of destruction. It is the heart of chaos, and it cannot be contained. Lyra's hand clenched around the pendant that hung from her neck. The flame inside her pulsed, hot and restless, but it was not the destructive fire the figure spoke of. She knew it. She had tamed it. She was its guardian. You're wrong, she said, her voice unwavering. The flame can be contained. It is not chaos. It is a force of balance, and I will protect it. The figure's laughter died, replaced by a low, rumbling growl. You fool, you cannot protect it. The hollow flame is the key to the forest's destruction. It is the seed from which all darkness will grow. With that, the figure raised a hand, and the ground beneath Lyra's feet trembled. The runes on the altar flared, casting eerie light over the scene. The trees around her groaned and cracked, their twisted branches reaching toward her like hungry fingers. No, Lyra whispered, stepping back. The fire inside her burned bright in response, trying to push back the encroaching darkness. I won't let you. I am the guardian, and I will keep the flame safe. But the figure's cold, hollow gaze fixed on her, and the wind began to howl. You cannot stop what has already begun. The hollow flame was never meant to be contained. It will spread, it will consume, and in the end, it will destroy all you hold dear. The path of the forest keeper has always been one of sacrifice, and you, Lyra, will be its final price. The air cracked with dark energy, and the world seemed to tilt. The ground split beneath Lyra's feet, and she was thrown backward, landing hard on the cold stone of the altar. As the world around her blurred, she heard the figure's voice one last time. The flame will burn until there is nothing left, until the forest is no more. Chapter 19, Into the Abyss. Lyra woke with a start, the echoes of the figure's words still ringing in her ears. Her body ached, and her vision was clouded, but the fire within her burned brighter than ever before. The hollow flame, though darkened by the shadow's influence, still hummed with power inside her. It was not her enemy, it was her ally, but its true nature remained shrouded in mystery. She stood, her hands trembling, and looked around. The forest was silent, but she knew that the figure's words were not idle threats. Something had awakened, and the forest was no longer the sanctuary it once was. The ancient forces that had slumbered beneath its roots were stirring, and they were growing restless. Lyra knew that the time had come to seek answers. She could no longer wait for the darkness to overtake them. The hollow flame was not just a force, it was a key, and she had to unlock its secrets before it consumed everything. Her eyes turned toward the distant hills, where the ancient mountains loomed like silent sentinels. If she was to find the answers she sought, she would have to travel further than she had ever gone before. She would have to journey to the very heart of the hollow flame, to the place where its true origins lay buried. And with that, Lyra set out on the path that would lead her into the very heart of the abyss. Would you like to continue Lyra's journey as she delves deeper into the mystery of the hollow flame, or explore other aspects of the unfolding darkness in the forest?